You know what really makes us mad is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers? Welcome to punklottopod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
I'm your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And this is the show where we choose a year and one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk-adjacent album from that year to discuss. This week, we're flying solo after last week's 200th episode Ramones Core bracket. Most of the feedback was fairly positive.
As expected, we did get, that's not Ramones Core comments. To which, I'm sorry, the internet told us that they were Ramones Core.
It was one of those things where, like, even when we're recording it, we're like, I don't think this is Ramones Core.
Yeah, but to be fair, they were all bands that I was like, I have definitely heard people call them Ramones Core. Like, I've definitely seen that tag for those bands prior to recording that episode. So it was like, listening to them yielded different results.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, probably what I would not have considered that genre. But so here we are with episode 201, back the way things used to be. Just two of us talking about records.
Just the two of us.
If you head over to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/punklottopod, for $1, you get access to all of our bonus audio. And this week, I don't know what we're doing. We haven't recorded it yet. We haven't even decided what we're doing. I think we're going to do an I'm Listening. It seems like the most likely thing we should do.
We have not done one of those in a minute, and we have already done the overall charts for this year. So seems like the next most logical move.
Yeah. So patreon.com. If you want to join at the $10 tier, that means you get to choose the album we devote an entire episode to. So just sign up there, $10, and then you don't have to stay on as a patron at 10. You can drop to $1 or off altogether. It doesn't matter. It'll be in the main feed. That's up to you. That's your money. You decide what to do with it. But you could choose any album within reason, mainly punk too, for us to talk about. I guess I shouldn't be like any album.
Yes. I don't know if we've ever really stipulated that before for the Patreons, that they have to be strictly. I mean, we did have Dave gave us an alt country record.
That's true.
One time. So I guess of interest to punks.
Yeah, there we go.
The umbrella that we'll use.
Yeah. And you can follow us on all the social medias, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at punklottopod, all those places. Emails punklottopod@gmail.com. Oh, yeah. That reminds me. Our good friend Madball Mystery Caller sent me a couple more songs with laughing in them. So let me pull those up real quick for us. We were talking about songs that feature laughing in them, mainly in reference to like a Fugazi song. And we get new ones all the time from our old, what's his name? Johnny Three Toes? But I'll play the clips of the laughing here. Up first, he sent me the song Ghoul Hunter by the band Ghoul. They're like a thrashy metal band off their album Maniacs. So here's the clip here. Just laughing in a metal voice.
I didn't hear any laughing. All I heard was kick drum. There.
Then he sent me All Time Low, Dear Maria, Count Me In.
Ha ha!
A good old ha ha! I knew that song. I didn't know how I knew that song, but I knew it already. And then last but not least, we've got an Avenged Sevenfold song.
Oh, yeah.
A Little Piece of Heaven. This song is 8 minutes long. And the laughter is at the 5:07 mark. what is that fucking? I said to him, what is this Nightmare Before Christmas sound and music? I don't know. Is that what all Avenged Sevenfold sounds like?
Yeah, you didn't know that?
I thought it was Bad Motley Crue.
It is. It's Bad Motley Crue doing Nightmare on Elm Street.
So if you've got songs with laughter in them, that seems to be the common one that's like the one that people like to send us. If you got a song with laughing in it, call us at 202. Oh my God.
688 punk.
Jesus. Call us at 202-688-punk and leave us a voicemail or text that number if you'd like to. That's where I'm aggregating. All right. So what are we doing today? We're talking about an album from 1991. And before we get into the actual album, we are talking about, I guess I didn't do the classic thing where I pick other albums I considered. So let me do that then. Let me tell you the ones that I was thinking about doing. I seriously considered Nevermind because I didn't know if anyone would ever actually choose that if we were to give them 91. It's such a big record and so obvious that I don't think anyone would want to choose it to devote an episode to when they could go with something a little bit more personal.
It's also not a punk record.
Yeah, they're using, what are they using as it's just calling it punk rock as the subgenre. It's grunge. It's not punk rock. I mean, there's punk elements, I guess, but
I mean, like, of the grunge bands, Nirvana was the most punk influenced. So, it's certainly, which I don't, kind of annoys me because on this website, we're allowed to subgenre Nirvana as punk, but not a single post Husker Du or even some of the late Husker Du records by Bob Mould or Sugar punk rock. You can't even put it in the subgenres. It will get voted down immediately. No, it's not punk rock. It is purely alternative rock. Those high BPMs and 4 to the floor rhythms and that foundational melodic hardcore guitar playing style that Bob Mould has used for his entire career are alt rock sounds. Reggae music is dumb sometimes.
I didn't even look into like non-punk tagged albums when I pulled this list. So I totally did not realize that Black Sheets of Rain was in 1990 because
91.
Because we're in 1991, so that would make no sense to talk about Black Sheep.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't think that was from that year.
You just started talking about Bob Mould, and I was like, I need to look and see what Bob Mould came out that year. Nothing.
No, yeah, because Sugar didn't come out until Copper Blue didn't come out until 92.
Yeah, I was leaning towards Drive Like Jehu's self-titled record, but then I was like, this one it would be one that someone might actually select, so I passed on that one because I was like, somebody will get to that eventually. Also, there's always a chance somebody will do Yank Crime on a different whatever year that was. So 94? Yeah. So I was like, I'll save that one. For a moment, I was like, should we do that Voivod record, Angel Rat?
I mean, I would have picked it.
Yeah, it was on the short list. It was being considered. I was just like, it got knocked off by what I actually selected, though.
Voivod, good band.
So I haven't quite figured out how to address the other albums from 1986 that I have not brought up on the show and may or may not bring up on the show. But there was a Voivod record from 86 that I listened to that was quite good. So I don't know if it'll ever actually wind up getting us recognition. Maybe if I do like a metal themed episode, you might see it on there. But I enjoyed it.
Yeah, which one is that? It's the second record, right? No, it's their third record. Wow. That
one would be
Roar.
Yeah, it's that one. Roar.
Nothing Face is a record right before Angel Rat, isn't it?
Yeah, 89.
Which is a classic record. I really enjoyed their 93 record, Outer Limits. So I imagine Angel Rat's probably pretty good. It's right in between those two records. Their new record, Synchro Anarchies, is fucking great. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. There is a period where Snake is not in the band, so the vocalist is different, and I don't know what that vocalist sounds like. So I don't know what the quality of those records is, but they seem decently well regarded. But yeah, the new one, Snake's back. I think he might have been on the last one too. It's just such a fun vocalist because he's he's not screaming, and he's not really even a good singer. He's just like a guy who talks like this. He's just like a G.I. Joe villain as a vocalist of a prog thrash band. Fun band. Recent discovery for me.
I thought about No Pocky for Kitty by Superchunk, but I've also done a lot of Superchunk discussion on the show. So I was like, I will save that one for someone. Maybe if they wanted to talk about it. You don't need to hear me devote a whole another episode to Superchunk. Unsane self-titled came out that year. I really almost picked that one, but it's not my favorite Unsane stuff. Plus, it would have been cool because they just reissued it and with a remaster, like a really, remaster. Sounds great, but if I was going to pick an Unsane record to do an episode on, I would go with a different one, a later one.
Yeah, the first couple of records, they sound cool, but they aren't as memorable. The songs just don't hook you. They don't have those riffs yet. They have the sound, they have the voice, and there's kind of some lineup changes in the early years that have a lot of effect on what they sound like. But
I considered even going fully left field and picking that Tin Machine record, which that's David Bowie's rock band he did in the late 80s, early 90s. I don't know if it's any good though.
It is not well regarded by.
Yeah, I don't think any of the Tin Machine stuff is very well regarded. So I was like, I don't know if I want to listen to that. And then there was other stuff. I really, really almost chose that Fishbone record, The Reality of My Surroundings. I think that would have been a good one to do. What's on that record? That really was the one that I was just like, should I do that one? Let's see. Do we have any? I don't recognize any of these. Sunless Saturday. Yeah, that's probably the most well-known. It's the very last track, too. And it's a solid hour. It's 59 minutes. So it's just like, I don't know. It might be a tough one. But what do you see on here that would be interesting to talk about?
You don't want to talk about a 90s alternative dance fall record?
Is that what that one is?
It's I think it's on that verge. I don't think they'd made that full switch to a very dance heavy sound. I think they do that on the next one. I don't know. Extra K is kind of dancey too. I have listened to a couple of 90s fall dancey records, and I usually listen to the whole thing, but they're not great. They just don't. They have moments for sure. And I think every fall record probably has something that you enjoy. They're just one of those bands where their later stuff, the consistency of their records themselves is not there. I would consider, I feel like 91, this would be I don't know, big, as far as big records go, and this is maybe not even that big, but 9 Patriotic Hymns for Children by Born Against, that would be a real contender.
Yeah, if we hadn't already talked about Born Against a little bit on, let's see, we did that one Starting 5 where I talked about that Born Against record, and then I think we brought them up not too long ago on an I'm Listening, and it just was I feel like I would run out of things to say.
I would probably, maybe I would go with the first Jawbox record, Grip.
Yeah, that was one that I was just save it for someone else.
It's great.
Thank you.
Freezer Burn, Tools and Chrome, Consolation Prize. It's a really good record. That might be the one I'd pick. Otherwise, I would maybe be inclined to go with something more obscure, like that Band of Susans record.
We keep threatening a Band of Susans episode.
We keep talking about it, and I want someone who knows something about that band to come on the show and talk about them, because I don't. And I have literally researched them before. I was like, what's this band's deal? And read their entire Wikipedia, and I can't remember. I don't know what context to put it in. Is it no wave? Is it shoegaze? Is it noise rock? They're a New York Sonic Youth influenced shoegazy noise rock band. So I guess that's where they fit. But
I really thought about that Moss Icon and Silver Bearing split, but I also was like, that's gonna be hard to listen to because it's probably gonna be one that you have to go to YouTube to listen to it. The Moss Icon side might be on Spotify on one of those because I'm pretty sure they have a pretty exhaustive discography record on there.
Yeah, I want to say they do.
It's probably just part of that famous record, and then they just put all the other singles and splits. Let's see if these songs are on here. Moss Icon. Oh, yeah. Complete discography from 2012. Yeah, they have that on there. Yep. Guatemala, Gravity. And afterwards, The Words Still Ring and Familiar Presides. So that's the A side. The B side is all Silver Bearing. And Silver Bearing is pretty sure that's a Sarah Kirsch band.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Sarah Kirsch did Silver Bearing. I also think that's live. It's like the only thing Silver Bearing ever recorded, and it's like live, I think.
Yeah, they were a super short-lived band.
Probably one of the most obscure Sarah Kirsch bands. I was inches away from choosing that Leeway record too. Desperate Measures. It's like a crossover thrash plus New York hardcore record. But then ultimately I was like, if I'm going to do a hardcore record, I'm going to do the one we're actually talking about today. But what else? Anything? We covered 91 on a Patreon chart dive where we did the overall. So we talked about anything punk. I think once you get past like page 5 or 6, you're going to like run out of records that you've heard of.
Yeah. I'm looking at the EPs. You got me thinking, I wonder if there are any significant EPs. And there's not really. Needle Pack by Rorschach, but that's not enough to talk about. It's great, but yeah, there's not enough there to really spend much time unless we're just talking generally about Rorschach. But yeah, there's that Gray Matter self-titled EP. But I would, if I were going to talk about Gray Matter, I'd pick something more substantial. One of the first couple of records.
We have in the past already covered the Reverend Horton Heat, Smoke 'em If You Got 'em, Leatherface's Mush. We did that one with Celebration Summer, Greg and Nate. And One Bad Pig's Ice Cream Sunday. That's One Bad Pig.
We need a squishy rubber pig that we can squeal anytime we bring that band up. Now you got me wondering, is there something off the punk charts that would be
that would be great,
that would have been a perfect fit
for us? Yeah, there's lots of shoegaze. We're in 91, so we got Slow Dive, we got Swerve Driver, Kitchens of Distinction.
Yeah, I don't mind saving shoegaze for My Bloody Valentine's Day.
Yeah,
we can leave that stuff. We could Arise by Sepultura. That could be a fun one. Certainly relevant to the record that we're talking about.
It is, shockingly. I think there'd be enough people who listen to our show, too, who would like Sepultura or would get a kick out of us talking about Sepultura.
We would probably be severely bending the rules here, but Bandwagon-esque by Teenage Fan Club.
Yeah.
That's a rock band. That's just a rock band. But I love them, and so you must, too. I was thinking maybe there's something in the metal world, but
we could have got away with that Dino Jr. record, Green Mind, but I've tried so many times to get into Dinosaur Jr. and I just can't do it. I can't. It doesn't work. I can't do it for me. It doesn't work for me.
Have we told on ourselves about Dino Jr. and our opinions of them on this show before? I'm trying to think of times where we've ever talked about Dinosaur Jr. because I feel like that's one of those controversial opinions that people would be like, what?
Maybe? I don't know. Maybe we have never really brought that up. Yeah. I don't care for Dinosaur Jr.
I have listened to a few Dino Jr. records that I can really appreciate qualities of them and what they are as a band and their influence on indie rock, their importance as like a guitar band. I just don't really enjoy listening to their records. And it's not even like, oh, this is terrible, turn it off. I'm just like, it doesn't raise the needle for me, and I don't want to really go back to them.
Yeah.
They're a band I totally get that I just don't care for.
Yeah, like I get it. I get why people like them, and I like things they do. Ultimately, it's the hooks and melodies. They just don't hit me at all. I know they're there, and Jay Mascis has a very distinct style. Wait, does he not sing? I don't know which one's the singer. He's the singer, right? Yeah, okay. It's his. I've never really been a big fan of the disaffected vocal style, and he has that. He's very similar to Sonic Youth, So we've told on ourselves.
Yeah, you can officially now yell at us, assign us Dino Jr. records.
And believe me, I've tried.
I really want to. That's the thing that kills me is I'm like, this is such an important band and they're so influential and like musicians that I love. And like our good buddy John Russell from Gnawing is like 100% doing Dino Jr. And I like it when he does it.
Yeah. It's our shame that we carry.
Yeah, it's the always try to avoid talking about Dinosaur Jr. so we don't get in trouble. Just like pretending. It's like the sports conversations at work where you're just like, yeah, uh-huh. Did you see that ludicrous display last night?
And when I had to, I talked to both Ann Laporte and Paul DiCiccio, who both picked last year's Dinosaur Jr. record for one of their favorite records of 2021. And I had to be like, sure. Yeah. Great band. Sure.
I've had people tell me that a lot of my guitar playing is like sounds Dino Jr. influenced. And I'm like, it's not at all.
Oh, well, let's get ourselves out of trouble and talk about a really great record. Why not? Oops, I tipped the bit.
Okay.
So I picked the year 1991, and the album we are talking about today is Those Who Fear Tomorrow by Integrity.
Micha!
Integrity is originally from Cleveland, Ohio. They formed in 1988. This was released June 15th, 1991 on Overkill Records. Overkill was a Seattle-based label whose most notable other band they released was Undertow. And then this album was reissued immediately on Dutch East India the same year. This is the band's first full-length album. And the personnel is Leon Micha Melnick on bass, Antonio Michael Pines on drums, Aaron Joseph Melnick on guitar, D.H. Hieronymus, a.k.a. Dwid Hellion on vocals, and with some additional guitar work by Christopher Hawthorne Smith. The record was produced by A Double and William Korecki. A Double, I think, is Aaron Melnick, not Arn Anderson. Korecki would later go on to produce Firestorm by Earth Crisis. Ever heard of it?
A little record called Firestorm.
And yeah, I have a few other notes here I'll save for later. But yeah, Integrity, Those Who Fear Tomorrow. Tell me all your thoughts on Dwid. And you really like to meet him.
I would like to meet Dwid. That would be cool. If there weren't major time zone issues, I would say we should try and get him on the show. But
right.
We haven't tried to book any European guests because he lives in Europe now, right?
He lives in Belgium.
Belgium, yeah.
We could do England. England's like 5 hours ahead. So as long as we did it like now, we could do it. Which would be in the evening there. So that would be perfect.
Yeah. So... Would only Dwid or
no? If you talk about Integrity,
I mean, it's kind of like if you're talking about Integrity, you kind of are talking about Dwid.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember the conversion moment that I had with Integrity. I'm trying to think of what was the first thing that I heard or what was the prompt. I'm fairly certain that it was our friend Grant of Bitter Melody Records who was like, "You should listen to Integrity," and maybe that was filtered through you. Maybe he told you and you told me, which is the same. But I don't know where it started. I do vaguely remember getting into them right around the time that The Blackest Curse came out, which was
2010.
2010, yeah. Should have known that. I listened to that last year. And so, yeah, it would have been 2010, most likely. I was definitely in college. I was maybe vaguely aware of them up to that point. And knowing them as like an important hardcore band, recognizing the name. but hadn't really listened to anything until that point. And I want to say I cannot remember if I started with this record or if I started with Humanity is the Devil. But I do remember listening to both pretty close together. So I'm assuming I started with this record and then was like, this fucking rips, and immediately moved on to other records. And then listened to The Blackest Curse and was like, this is great. This is a consistent band. Not really knowing why exactly that is. But other than that, they've been kind of they haven't been a band that I have like deep dived, but have always really liked and appreciated. And really appreciate their influence on hardcore. And there's not a lot of bands that I can say are like full integrity worship. I don't know that there's any one band that I feel like does a total repackage of integrity the way that there are a lot of hardcore bands that do like straightforward Earth Crisis or are like almost one-to-one Indecision, Most Precious Blood style bands. But there's definitely a lot of bands that draw influence that is pretty clear when you see it, when you hear it.
So, yeah, I think Integrity was one of those bands that like I'd heard about and read about, and like I knew they were an important band with a pretty big discography. I never knew where to start. And the only actual beginning I could remember of me really listening to Integrity. Do you remember? I don't remember what site it was on, but Integrity like put up a bunch of their albums and EPs up for free download like at the same time. And I don't remember what site it was. I don't remember. It wasn't Bandcamp because I don't think it was quite a thing yet. But it wasn't every record either. It was like just a lot of EPs. And I think we were told by Grant to go to this site, download Humanity is the Devil, and then like a couple other EPs. And he's like, that's a good place to start. What was the one called? Wump Scarlet, that little EP.
What is that called?
Walpurgisnacht.
Yeah, Walpurgisnacht. Which is the, what does that mean?
I have no idea.
Walpurgisnacht is the eve of May Day, on which witches are held to ride to an appointed rendezvous.
That and Love is the Only Weapon split EP, their songs. Those are like the three things I downloaded from them. And then I was like, oh, hell yeah. Humanity the Devil? This record rules. So then I definitely would have then gone back to Those Who Fear Tomorrow. I distinctly remember listening to like the 15th anniversary edition because it had like a shit ton of bonus tracks too. Which is funny. This record has had so many different like reissues. There's like a 25th anniversary version. There's whatever the one that came out this year is, as far as what anniversary it would be. Yeah, it's the first record, so I guess it's one of the most important ones in their discography, of course. So you'd heard this record before, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
What did you think? So I'll say this part first. I already knew this record. What I would say I knew it well, but not like I didn't have it memorized, like one of those records. Very important album that I knew was just like great and a classic, and I thought would be worth talking about. What did you think when you revisited it?
It starts with such a classic moment with that doo-doo-doo bass line and the Micha scream. Like it's such a like of a moment, but then there's like nobody that does it exactly that way. Like because it's like this is a metalcore record.
Yeah.
But it's that really early it's pre-Firestorm. It's that really early metalcore that is, we didn't have the standard book of riffs the metalcore bands would go off of. So this record has this really patchy feeling to it of being like, we're pulling from metal and hardcore in so many different ways, but not in a way that sounds like Suicidal Tendencies.
Yeah.
Or, this gets kind of tagged as crossover, and I can see how there's like, you can make that comparison when you look at the particularly thrashy moments on this record. The stuff that sounds like it was directly referencing Slayer and Metallica and but it's not a crossover record, and not a single song on this record is consistent from beginning to end a crossover song. And this record is like, the ways that it's pulling from metal and punk and hardcore are so like all in that you really don't have any song that is metalcore in a strict definition from beginning to end. You really don't have any songs on this record that are even strictly hardcore or strictly metal or anything else from beginning to end. Like every song practically is like, this part is fully a metal song, and this part is fully a hardcore song, and this part is like a Sabbath riff, and this part is, you know, like, it's such a wild ride of a record that it really, metalcore is what you call it, and it certainly like defined a lot of like grooves and rhythms and riffs that would influence metalcore, that would be kind of standardized, but it's not. It's really hard to even call it a metalcore record in the way that the songs are structured and the parts are played out. It is and it isn't. It's Schrodinger's metalcore.
It is considered one of the earliest metalcore records, and them as a band. Out of curiosity, I just pulled what is tagged metalcore in 1991, and there's some Converge 7-inches that came out that year. There's the self-titled Converge 7-inch and Gravel. But even then, I've heard early Converge, and they're not really metalcore even at this point. I think that's just people going, Converge is metalcore, tag.
Yeah, super early Converge stuff is like, it's almost like Today Is the Day. It's almost noise rock.
The two actual notable metalcore contemporaries from this time, Rorschach's Needlepack and Downcast has a self-titled. Those are the ones that I would say are actually metalcore. There is a Ringworm demo, as well as a Snapcase. It looks like a demo, Break the Silence. But that's what we're doing. Like, it's the bands who would kind of help formulate. 108 has a demo that year. The bands who would kind of help formulate the genre of metalcore until I'd say late 90s, when everybody started ripping off at the gates and redefining what metalcore is. Like, they're all in their infancy at these points. And Integrity's still very early in their career, but they've been around. They released a series of 7-inches and EPs already by this point.
Yeah. And prior to this, you have a lot of EPs by them and Downcast, and a lot of stuff by Rorschach. Starkweather's self-titled EP was in 1990. And all of those bands are like, there's something that's just really off. It's not... They're processy. They're very like, you can see how the parts are coming together. You can see how the influences are coming together. Like, they're not following a manufacturing guideline for metalcore. They're engineering it is what's happening, and it's which is really such a fun period of metalcore, and really in hardcore in general to look at. And you have the same thing going on with post-hardcore too, as it's kind of like this quasi genre of like, it's hardcore, but it's like, sometimes it's soft but not sad. It's not emo.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, even emo in this time period is in a weird kind of fluctuating phase. Like, it's still a lot of leftover Rev Summer style bands. You know, Fugazi did Steady Died of Nothing in 91, and I guess they were probably still being called emo by people at the time, but they were already evolving away from that sound. Sam I Am put out Soar, which Sam I Am are one of those borderline emo bands anyway, much like Jawbreaker. Like, they have emo elements, but I don't call them emo bands.
And it's interesting to think of metalcore as a genre that is developing post Youth Crew, kind of alongside post-hardcore, also alongside grunge, because really a lot of the bands that started metalcore as a genre all started around the same time that the first waves of grunge bands started. And then also alongside that, you have like the alternative metal, groove metal sounds all really forming together. And a lot of these things are cross-pollinating in such a big way. Like, you can easily make the connection to like groove metal bands to Integrity just as easily as you can make their connection to like Soundgarden, or or getting weirder, and like you have post-hardcore that goes kind of in these like weirder directions, and some of that kind of overlaps with groove metal and alternative metal and grunge, and really all together you have this like some of it underground and then some of it becoming mainstream, complete reaction to, I guess, to hair metal.
Yeah.
Really? I mean, like the commodified version of metal, the most like slick and polished, glammed up, like this is supposed to be like tough and angry music, but it's like, it's, pro studios and like people singing in falsettos and like, and punk, certainly as a genre had its like, people wanted to call it over by the late 80s. So it really has this total identity crisis, and there's nothing really unifying. I think the most unifying thing is hardcore just getting tighter and angrier and really drawing a lot from metal.
Mm-hmm. Which makes sense because like all the hardcore bands either broke up or became crossover thrash bands. So like,
or goth bands.
Or goth. Yeah, goth was the other option. But yeah, it's
And then you have a band like Integrity that's like, what about all of those?
Why?
There's a huge goth influence on Integrity. I mean, like imagery alone is just like, Renaissance art and like, surreal, like Hieronymus Bosch.
Yeah,
kind of artwork.
The original album artwork is the Francis Bacon album art. That's the original. But the version that's on a lot of websites is the Hieronymus Bosch version, which I think is the Dutch East India version.
Yeah.
So like the Francis Bacon one is the classic artwork. It's the one that you see referenced in later editions. The Bosch one was just, I guess, just that label's decision to be like, no, let's do Bosch, which is just then makes you go a little on the nose, I guess, because he was calling himself HR or DH Hieronymus or something like that at the time. So, I mean, he's obviously a Bosch fan. So, but yeah, the imagery is definitely there. Integrity's known for being this band with like a billion releases and tons of band members. There was a period though where the band was at least consisted of 3 key members. So we have Dwid Halion vocals, and the main other contributors are the Melnick brothers, Leon and Aaron. They played bass and guitar. Aaron's the one who does all the lead guitars and all the fun like dive bomb strings and all that stuff. Antonio and Aaron would later go on to join One Life Crew. Chris Smith would later go on to form Keelhaul, which is a pretty cool band. He was the beginning of the second guitar in Integrity too. He's credited as additional guitars on this record. I think had just maybe joined because I think he plays with them for a little bit longer. Integrity has nearly 50 releases, counting EPs and 7-inch singles. Little history of this, though, is that it was originally meant to be released on Progression Records, but that label actually went out of business before the album could come out. So then they wound up going to Overkill. A handful of these songs did appear on some 7-inches. So before this record, March of the Damned and Darkness were released on Ka-Single. And In Contrast of Sin came out on a 7-inch for Victory Records with the same name. Apparently the band had lots of issues with Victory and Tony Brummel.
Tony Scammell.
Who didn't?
Yeah.
And so that's why they were like, no, when Progression folded, they didn't just go to Victory. And they were just like, we'll find somebody else to do it.
They did go back to Victory later, and they stayed with them for a little while.
Yeah.
Until they broke up in the 90s. But yeah, the Integrity story is like, I could only really find like, I couldn't really find any elaboration on any of the points.
Mm-hmm.
I could never really find anything that was like, this is exactly what happened and this is what he said and why I quit. And like,
Yeah.
like the only thing that I knew was they were like formed from, you know, members of previous band that fell apart, and like Dwid was kicked out but then like came back to start the band, and at Tony's behest. It was like Tony and not Walter from Gorilla Biscuits, but who was it?
Ray Capo?
Was it Ray or was it Walter?
Or
I need to go find
Ray
that
wasn't
out.
in Gorilla Biscuits.
Yeah.
Civ? Yeah, that was a funny story though. Like a bunch of them were in a band together already, like 3 or 4 of them, and Dwid got kicked out, and then they just got back together later and were like, we're Integrity now.
It was Walter. Yeah. So it was, Dwid was kicked out and was replaced by someone else in Die Hard. Then after he left, Tony contacted him because Walter told him to. So Walter from Gorilla Biscuits was like, hey, this band's crazy. You should get in touch with this dude from Die Hard. So then he made, so it was like, hey, we can make a demo for Tony and Victory will put us out or something. So that it was like got kicked out and then reformed the band basically as a different band, because it's like, hey, we got a label that'll put us out. That'll be like a big deal.
So this is kind of considered the classic era of the band. Chris Smith would make it until 1994, and the Melnick brothers would last until 1998, which is kind of the end of the classic era. And then after that, you get Integrity 2000, which a lot of people are split on. Like, a lot of people hate Integrity 2000, but other people will love it. So I think the people who fall into the love it would be the Death Wishes of the world, you know?
I think that the people who hate Integrity 2000 are the people who have not listened to any Integrity records past Integrity 2000. I think it's the people that are like strictly classic period Integrity, you know, pre-breakup Integrity, who are, and I think maybe they're basing their opinion on being like, it's just Dwid, like kind of like seeing it as maybe an ego trip. And I don't know. Dwid is an interesting person, but no interviews that I've read with him, and these are like more recent interviews, he doesn't come across as particularly egotistical, but he maybe was then. And there was certainly like interband conflict as far as like member change. I mean, him being kicked out from the previous band and then members leaving throughout Integrity's initial run. And they broke up because of internal conflict. So, but I don't know what that was. And I don't know.
I mean, the drummer left the band immediately after this record.
Yeah.
Like, he's gone as soon as this record comes out. So they have to go get a new drummer before they can even do anything for this in support of this record.
Yeah, they had like 3 drummers within like the span of like the EP before this and the next album or something.
Yeah. And so as a beginning record, to me, this is like, shit, how do you top this? And a lot of people are like, they didn't. But then it's like, I don't know if people are like, no, Systems Overload is amazing.
It's a great record.
Man is the Devil later. People Love to Die For, which was a reunion era. And then, like, yeah. So as a first record, though, when I listen to it, I'm like, these songs are so good. The recording's a little weird. Is it bad recording?
it's on that low budget side of recording that I like.
Yeah, right.
In heavy music, especially. It's definitely not what you would have recorded in like a professional studio. But I think that that's a really big part of like what makes a lot of the heavy music from this time period that is not hair metal or is not full on thrash kind of jarring and kind of really satisfying, because it gets into this kind of nitty gritty lo-fi, very punk ethos. You know, the songs are what are really important and the riffs are really important. I do think that everything here is recorded with enough fidelity that they don't have any like frequencies that really grate on you and are hard to listen to. I think everything is recorded just well enough to be listenable and mixable. And I do think that the mix is weird, but also that kind of weird mix that I kind of like. And a great record to compare it to is the Fugazi record from this year. That very democratic mix of everything being very distinct and really at the same level. There's not like we want to push the bass low so it's foundational, and we want to bring the vocals up so you can understand what they're saying. We want to have, you're not doing like, we want to have this big room pan sound, for one, you can't do that because there's no room there, but and they're not like putting effects on it. They're not saying like, let's add some reverb to it or anything like that. It's very dry. And it's definitely not the way anyone would mix heavy music today.
No. Yeah, thinking about the mix, it is really interesting because like the drums are there's points where the drums sound like they're banging on cardboard. Like they are not very well recorded drums. That becomes a subject later, and I want to save that for later. So the drums feel kind of weak, but you hear them pretty clearly. Like there's no like, you hear them, they're there, they're present. They just don't pack the punch that they probably did in person.
Yeah.
To me, the bass work stands out so much on this record. Like that's probably one of my favorite elements to the record, of the instruments at least, because it's like you didn't really have such bass forward hardcore at this time. It's very just like very gain heavy, very present in the mix, maybe to the guitar's detriment, because I would say the guitar is probably underproduced or undermixed in here. It's kind of thin.
Yeah, it's one of those things where everything is so balanced. It's almost as if you could like, if you were mixing it by sight, it's kind of almost how it like you're looking at the VU meters and being like, all right, they're all equal, which is not really what you would do, because you have different frequency bands and you have like, so like, yeah, the bass kind of like, it kind of sucks up the power and the like the low frequencies and the beefiness that you would have wanted in the guitar, or you would have wanted in the drums, but it makes the bass sound fucking cool.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, it's such a hard balancing act, and it's just such a sound that I can on paper say is wrong, but I don't dislike it when I hear it.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's the thing that kind of really gives this record its character. Like it really feels like a different sounding band for the time. And there is really good guitar playing on here. Like there's fun leads, but also like the leads are kind of sloppy, and like not even the leads are recorded that great on some songs. Where I would give more low end would probably be to the rhythm guitar, but yeah. And Dwid sounds great. Like Dwid sounded great from this record on. Like they had that perfect. Like, well, we got to make sure that the star of this band is really shining.
I did say there's not a lot of room on the record as far as like referring to like room sound. That was a mistake. There's so much room in Dwid's voice. They just like, he just stood back from the mic and screamed. Is really what it sounds like. It's just in a shitty room. You have so much like, reflection bouncing back into the microphone, and it sounds wild. And he sounds unhinged. It's a top-notch vocal recording style. I think it's perfect for hardcore.
at the tracks, there's a couple non-songs on the record. It's not that long of an album. It's 37 minutes, which I guess for a hardcore record in 1991 is probably a little long, but for a metal record in 1991, it's kind of short. So it's a little bit of both. There's a lot of tracks on here, but a lot of it's just kind of like, it's 15 tracks. The first track is not a song. It's just this like low rumble, weird guitar sounds and like clips of someone talking. It's not really a song. Probably borrowing from a lot more of the sludge or no wave or industrial type stuff to get that track together. But then leads right into the title track with the Micha yell. The Micha, yeah. Micha! Just perfect way to start this record from Dwid, which one of the best songs on the record. But I don't know, there's a lot of really good songs on here.
Oh, yeah, like Lundgren, Crucifixion.
Lundgren Crucifixion is really good. I love Judgment Day, because that's the one he's got the demon voice on, where they layer his voice and he sounds like he's possessed.
Wings Terror is great.
Darkness is good, because that's where he does the more like screechy vocal style, because Dwid has a pretty interesting range for a hardcore vocalist. Like, he doesn't just do the same thing in every song. Dawn of the New Apocalypse is really good. That one feels like an apocalyptic song. But then there's like weird, like Kendra Nama Vijayasa Striptum's Kaliast. It's not a song. It's an interlude. But then like Apollyon's Whisper doesn't feel like a full song either. Though I listened to that song and I was like, Zao ripped this song off for on Liberate for sure.
Absolutely.
Dark Cold Sounds, I want to say.
Yeah.
The Whispering. Yeah, there's just some like really, really great moments on this album. The whole record is good to great. Like, it makes complete sense why this became such a classic album.
I think, and as far as like the non-songs, the interludes, the excursions and experimentation adds to an atmosphere for the record that maybe the recording doesn't quite give it. That you could scale back those experiments and add more of like a more experimental sonic palette to the songs themselves and maybe have something ultimately more cohesive. But I think that they do give the record a feeling and a mood in the way that they're isolated to those tracks. I think it still works. They're skippable, and you still have like a great thrashy record, but you don't have that evil feeling. That is really so essential to integrity of being like, this is dark.
He started a religion. Holy terror.
This is some cult shit. And which was kind of I was reading a little bit about Dwid's, like, because I'm like, he's a little weird, right?
Yeah, he's a little weird.
He's a little weird, and it's like, is dangerous weird? Is it something to be concerned about, or is it like, and I think it was really kind of reassuring to me to read kind of how he came to where he is in terms of like all of the occult and like aesthetic stuff that he does. It's very aesthetic. It's very like art, like conceptual. He grew up in Indiana on a farm by very religious Christian parents, and as he was growing, he was talking about growing up as a teenager in the 80s and like seeing all of the like the Satanic Panic stuff, the PRMC stuff, and his religious background, and then going to art school and looking at like the artwork that the artists that we referenced, like, and how influential those were, and like Dadaism and collage and all of the like anti-art kind of art approaches of of modern art, and how so much of that rolls together into this like kind of rule challenging and convention challenging, and really just being ultimately seeming like a really ultimately an open-minded person who's like, challenges authoritarianism, and especially like religious authoritarianism. So it like being into like cult stuff, like that seems contrary, but I feel like it's this like, it's to break your conception or preconceived notions, and to like look at those systems and structures and power dynamics more broadly by having it focus in on this like really like dark and malevolent like unique power structure. So I definitely don't get like a bad feeling. It's definitely like this guy's on the right side. He's not trying to like control people's minds or anything.
Yeah. He seems to have more of an apocalyptic philosophical approach to everything that he does. We jokingly call Holy Terror a religion. Do you know who the other Holy Terror bands are?
Not off the top of my head, but I know the Holy Terror stuff is like, it's not even like directly related. It's like other bands being like, oh, I like that, I'm a Holy Terror band.
Yeah. I want to say Catharsis is one, but Catharsis is also a Crime Think band, so they're like both.
Yeah,
they're Crime Think, and they're the anarchist branch. Gehenna, Rotten Hell, In Cold Blood, Disembodied, Ringworm a little bit. If you go to Holy Terror on Last FM, you get a lot of people tagged as Holy Terror, and I'm like, I don't know, I don't think that's true.
I think a lot of people maybe throw the Holy Terror tag on any band that has like metal satanic aesthetics.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's like a really quintessential aspect of. I mean, it's the look is definitely there.
I also think you can just call yourself that. I don't think Dwid's like, no, you're not an officially recognized Holy Terror band. It's not even like a thing that I think he really even pushes either. Like, it's not even. It was just more of a tag to put similar sounding bands together more than anything, or styled bands. I mean, we know someone who's worked with him, Grant, who runs Bitter Melody. We mentioned him earlier. He did 2 8-tracks. He did the first. He did this record on 8-track as well as Systems Overload. And
to Dwid's credit, when they were working on some of the merchandising, Grant suggested knives.
Yeah, right.
And Dwid was like, I don't think that we should sell Integrity knives. That seems like encouraging Integrity fans who are maybe not the most mentally stable to do things that they shouldn't.
Yeah. They did some fun shirts though. They did like a red glitter shirt, and then like a puff ink shirt, which I have both of those. I have the 2 8-tracks. And Integrity is almost a brand at this point. Like, Grant was doing that stuff. Holy Mountain does lots of Integrity merch. Shirt Killers does lots of Integrity merch. Like, he's all about like, yeah, you can do that. Licensing stuff out. He's very particular.
Yeah, I think he is particular about who he works with.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to get that passive income, bro.
Yeah. And there's tons of Integrity merch. It's really funny. There's so much Integrity, so many different Integrity shirts. I think Death Wish still has stuff too, because they did a lot of their records. But Grant actually talked to him on the phone, and like had conversations with him. So I think he's like he kind of is portrayed as this like, oh, he's a weirdo, but I don't think he's nearly as weird as I think it's more an image than it is who he really is. But
yeah, I mean, it's just that challenging art mentality. Yeah. It really is really all it is, and that puts people off when it's like, when you're really invested into those kinds of creative processes, and that something I didn't realize is kind of how interpretive he wants his art to be, like how open to interpretation he wants Integrity lyrics to be is not something I had expected, but it makes sense kind of because they are just like this like evil shit, like it's like they're just really dark and evil, but it's not really pointing at anything super specific, and it's kind of like you get to read into that, like, which maybe kind of allows yourself to be interpreted in not good ways. But
he also doesn't really doesn't handhold what his lyrics are about. He kind of lets it take on a life of its own.
Yeah, and I think it is. They are kind of just poetic, and if you need artistic intent, I don't think it's too hard to figure out what he thinks is evil in the world.
But yeah, it's that apocalyptic lyric writing. It's kind of.
But I think maybe like, I think in the 90s and earlier in his life, he might have been more confrontational with people. Because they certainly have that legacy of like a hardcore band that was like getting into trouble or getting into fights or,
scary hardcore band.
Yeah.
Well, watch out when you go to an integrity show. Dangerous.
But I feel like that's been said about literally every 90s hardcore band. I think that was what hardcore has been. It's just what it's always been.
Yeah. I did want to mention that Relapse just this year released a remixed and remastered version of the album. And for some reason, they decided to have Igor Cavalera, or Igor.
Probably Igor.
Yeah. Of Sepultura, re-record the drums on the record. The whole thing. So my guess is they just scrapped the entire drum track and then had him redo it. And then the remaster or the remix on the guitars is also noticeably different. Like, I put it on and I was like, this record sounds completely different in a way that I don't like. I'm not a fan of this remix and remaster with new drums. It just, I guess what it does is it puts it in sonic similarity to the rest of their discography. So it sounds bigger, it sounds heavier, higher quality. But to me, then it also then causes it to lose some of its character that makes this record so special to listen to. Did you sample any of the remastered stuff?
No.
The drumming right away is just like, oh yeah, I mean, that's a completely different drum like set that's being played. It is not remixed drums, it's new drums mixed in, which is very weird. Which I guess that comes from the drums don't sound great as far as what you would want them to sound like, but I don't know. I like them better than the new drumming, and I love Sepultura, and he's a phenomenal drummer. I don't know. I'm not a fan of what the choice to. I'm typically not a fan of choice to re-record entire
That's
parts
the
of
deluxe
records.
Version, right?
Yeah, the one that's listed. It's like the original artwork, but it's black and white. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like the production's thicker and heavier and more lower tuned, but I don't know. I just I tuned out more listening to it than I did the original. And it's been remastered a couple times. Like, it's not. I think the 25th version is a remaster.
Yeah, I mean the 25th anniversary version that is like as close as you get to the original version on Spotify is technically remixed.
Yeah, I think the 15th anniversary one was a remix too. But they all sound similar. They still sound like they took the same recordings and just kind of punched them up a bit. And now I did not do a side by side on the original mix. I bet if you'd have to like pull up like a YouTube rip of the 1991 CD.
Yeah, and then it's all compressed to shit because it's on YouTube.
Yeah, but Integrity's also like Dwid gets their stuff remastered all the time. Like, he's done it multiple times. Systems Overload has the Destroyer mix or something like that. So like the Ore mix, Systems Overload. Yep. But that's just me. I just don't really care for remasters. I guess if you hang out with a lot of metal people, though, you're going to be like, no. Metal is one of those genres that a huge chunk of the fan base wants the slickest, highest production that you could possibly get.
Yeah. People were talking about going back to Voivod. That new record has tons of people being like, the mix and mastering is terrible. I'm like, it sounds fine. It sounds too slick, actually. I don't know what you guys want, how much more slick you can make it. Yeah, metal can be very, very picky.
It's funny because there's like lots of different beliefs and philosophies when it comes to metal. Like, there is that like overproduced, super, processed sounding metal. You get that a lot with like Power and Prog and
a lot of the really technical stuff. A lot of the really technical death metal stuff too is like,
yeah, really techy, real tech. Maybe that's what it is. You want to show off what you're doing.
Yeah.
Metal. I'd say metalcore as a whole is pretty overproduced, very processed. But then you're also like, no, black metal has to be recorded in the worst possible way to be the best kind. That's like the other philosophy. Or like stoner or doom. They're like, we used as much vintage equipment as we possibly could, like, because we want those warm tones. And
yeah,
there's a lot of approaches with metal.
All that mid range. Yeah. I mean, I guess it's what it is. Depends on the genre, but whose ears are you trying to tune your record to? That's such a, for a metalcore band, that's such a classic metalcore band.
Yeah, I do think a lot of my guess is Dwid, when he hears it, goes, man, I would do so much different. I wish we could fix this, and then he finally fixed it, I guess.
Yeah,
it's interesting to hear, especially just for reference, but I definitely prefer the regular version of the album. It's still remixed and remastered, but the spirit's there. That's more, that kind of remix remastered just kind of makes it sound better for the listening, like the technology that has improved as far as listening has gone, concerned.
Yeah, I do think that generally remastering is necessary whenever you're making medium changes.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're putting it on CD, don't just dump the vinyl master onto it. That's that's weird. That doesn't sound right. Because you're not dealing with like turntable rumble. And how it gets louder the closer you get to the middle of the record. Yeah. It needs to be the same volume from beginning to end.
Mm-hmm.
Or the same loudness, I should say. It's not volume, but
yeah, you're having to actually boost the volume on the however you're cutting it on the edge of the record, and then lowering the volume as you get closer to the middle of the record to make to balance.
Yeah. And then, however, I mean, no matter what you're doing, if you're putting it on streaming, it's
going to sound bad. Streaming on earbuds, it's going to sound terrible.
Flattened to hell.
Which most people are probably hearing it streaming with earbuds. It's like, the worst platform to hear through the worst type of headphones to hear. So
yeah.
But any final thoughts on the record?
No, I mean, it makes me want to start a metalcore band.
Yeah, it's the type of stuff I like the most as far as metalcore is concerned. It's
the kind of thing I want to recreate.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of like my highest praise for most hardcore bands.
I want to do this.
Maybe that's just like the unfulfilled, like my hardcore band didn't get to do all the things I wanted to do. So I'm just like, I'm always like, oh, I would do that. Oh, I want to do that. But at the same time, like, the remix remastering question, like, I wouldn't go back and fix any of the things that were wrong that I don't like about what we recorded.
Yeah.
It's fine. Leave it. It's old. It's what it was.
It's a warts and all situation, I think.
Yeah.
Unless it's something that you're just like, God, it's unlistenable. Why was that on there? Then you fix that. But then you're like, hopefully I would have caught that in the first place.
Yeah. So why is there pink noise just running constantly through this record?
Yeah. It's like, maybe we should re-record this. Let's get Igor in here. Yeah, Those Are Here Tomorrow. Classic hardcore record, metalcore record of the 90s. Feels very ahead of its time. And not of the moment either. Like, it feels, besides the production, it still feels pretty fresh sounding.
Yeah, an unusual record where you can see a lot of the influences, and then you can also hear of the influences that it made. But then you can't think of anything that sounds anything like it. So
yeah. Well, that'll do it. Reach out to us on all the social medias, voicemail, email. Let us know your thoughts on Integrity. I want to hear some Integrity thoughts, because I don't know what our listenership is like when it comes to this band. I can imagine some people being like, hell yeah, Integrity. So, or I can also see people who don't typically listen to our show finding it through this. So if you are hearing us for the first time, welcome. Integrity rules. We don't really get to cover I feel like we don't cover as much hardcore as we could.
I was going to say, like, I don't know that our listener base is heavily into hardcore.
Yeah, I think it depends.
Few people I know for sure, but
yeah, let us know what you think. Shoot us a line, punklottopod on pretty much everything, and voicemail 202-688-PUNK. But yeah, that'll do it for this week, and we will see you next week. Oh, let me do this. If you're still listening, I want a little feedback here. So I'm planning on doing another Dance of Days 1986. It's going to come out in the month of October. Should I do something spooky? I'm thinking of doing like a theme. So like picking like horror punk, death rock, psychobilly, you know, like our Halloween Spooktacular type stuff as like my kind of like running theme throughout. Or should I just do just whatever? Just like just what I think the next 5 best things I've listened to from 86. So messages, send us a DM, chat, add at us. You know how to talk. You know how to talk to a podcast. If you're still listening, I put this at the very end of the show, so most people might have just stopped play when they said, "All right, that's it." And so here we are. But thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week.